This Jocks 94.5 podcast is brought to you by Millennium Satellite and Video. Log on to msbnow.com. TV excellence everywhere. That's Millennium. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning starts now.
All right, welcome back in. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Hour number 2 underway, 8 a.m., Tuesday, June 23rd, right here on Jocks. We've had conversations of maybe the great divide in college football for quite some time. Will it happen? Is it going to happen? Is there going to be some pull away? There have been accusations of a super conference by different individuals. Obviously, we've heard about that discussion in Washington the last couple of weeks. Tim Stevens is going to join us in just a moment to have that discussion on the Higginbotham hotline. First, I'll tell you about our friends at Train. It has been comfortable the last few days. You guys know good and well that's not going to stick around, not going to be here for long. The heat and humidity will return. Keep your home and family comfortable with America's most reliable HVAC brand, Train. And to help, Train is offering a $1,350 rebate on select home comfort systems. Learn more. Find a comfort specialist near you at Train.com. It's hard to stop a Train. Tim Stevens joining us now from the Diehard Sports Network. Article up at diehardsportsnetwork.com. The Moat. The real divide in college sports isn't driven by what you think. So, Tim, for those that have not read your article, we will tag that from our Twitter account, try to get that in front of more people for you. What would be the great divide in college sports that some are may not considering right now?
Yeah, so if you look at what's happening in Washington, great, Cole, Greg, thanks for having me on. Like if you look at what's happening in Washington right now, you know, they're right now everything is focused on, you know, passing this bill, bringing some sanity to the NIL landscape and the revenue share with college athletics, which certainly isn't going away, but it does need structure. I think everybody agrees to that. And people tend to focus this right now on, is this the SEC and the Big Ten versus everyone else, and at least the super conference discussion. But these are issues that have existed in college athletics really since the first time someone pointed a television camera at a football field and say, you know, this could be pretty big and it could make some money. And the real divides along those lines are not have versus have not. And they never have been. It is about political coalitions within those groups. And right now, people tend to focus this on Power 4 versus group of 6 or 5 or whatever you want to call it. And that's not really where it is. The divide is between have more and have everything, okay? And if you look at this bill and where it's going, this is not G6 versus P4. This is the 20 to 25 brands in college athletics that drive 90% of the revenue and 90% of the eyeballs, and who gets to be allowed to be associated with them. And this bill, as it currently sits, really is about protecting the Big 12 and the ACC and their position much more than determining what happens for the SEC and the Big Ten. And that's where the fight's going to be.
So a lot of people have painted the biggest brands as the real enemy here, the Alabamas of the world, the Ohio States of the world. And basically your argument is it's really not those schools that are kind of driving this train, because G6 access, for example, wouldn't affect them because in all likelihood they would take care of business if they played against a G6 team in the playoff. It actually sounds like it's coming from the middle to bottom tier of those P4 teams. Am I reading this correctly, and am I accurate in depicting the way you're trying to describe it?
Yeah, I think that's actually a really, really good. And I've said this before on X, and it always leads to some interesting conversations. I would tell you that the most subsidized entities in all of American sports, college, pro, anywhere you want to look, are the 25 to 30 Power 4 brands that nobody actually watches unless they're playing one of those big dogs, okay? They've been in a position of privilege and inclusion in the club all along simply because they were around when these things were being formed and when the power structure was being built up from the beginning. But, you know, they've had 50 years of television access and shared revenue, a number that begins with a B, by the way, that they've received each of those schools, and they've done virtually nothing with it except provide regular and reliable semi-competitive L's, losing a clip to those power brands that's somewhere between 60 to 75, 80% of the time they play them, okay? And you can go look up the numbers. I'm not making this up. You can go look at their numbers. You look in those big brands. What's Mississippi State? I'm not picking on them, but just what's Mississippi State's records against Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, LSU? What is it? It's going to be about 30%. And I can look at any brand at the bottom there, and that's what it is. And this has been about really protecting their place. And this bill is structured. Who's leading it? Who's pushing it? It's coming out of the Big 12, right? It's coming out of a billionaire who says, wait a minute, what happens to us if we lose our access? This is about making sure their position is protected and that the Big Ten and the SEC don't just grab 3 or 4 more brands that really belong in their group if we're just looking at strict television revenue possibility and doing their own thing. And that's really where this fight is going to sit. And the G6 are just tagging along for the ride, hoping that they can be a useful ally because their access really is just about association. If you look at college sports, there's those 20, 25 brands. We all know who they are. Doesn't matter what conference they're in. It's their brand, who they are, and their television value. And everybody else, all the way down to D2, their value is directly determined by how closely they get to sit next to those 20 to 25.
Tim Stevens of the Diehard Sports Network joining us on the Higginbotham Hotline discussing kind of the moat of college sports, mainly college football, and where things are headed. I love some of the conversation starters with the G6 here and where you go in your article and how you bring them up here on the show. I've asked the question for a long time. Is anyone out there sitting around in a forward-thinking fashion of, because the way you laid it out that they're just sort of hanging on for dear life is the way that I have viewed it for quite some time. And I get it. It's a lot of revenue they're hanging on to, and there should be a real fear that you might not be able to generate that much more. But is there any conversation you've heard of, you've seen, you've been made aware of, that is in more of a forward-thinking fashion from the lower levels of college football to say, we got to come up with our own thing? Because if we don't, we're going to get left behind and have literally nowhere to turn instead of trying to get ahead of it and find something to do on their own.
Oh, I think that is definitely happening. It's been really interesting, guys, to see the way opinions have split along these lines as well as the way they have evolved. Okay, let's just be real about it. The G6 and the P4 operate in a completely different financial reality. And it's not separated in a small amount. It is separated by tens of millions of dollars annually, compounded by decades. You can just do the math on a 10-year window and see that those numbers start with B's, not M's. And it's a different financial reality. And the legal risk is very different because of it. Right now, the G6 schools are having to carry the legal risk of Ohio State and Michigan because of the NCAA structure as it is right now. They can't come to a more sane collegial type structure as we're currently configured. They're dragged into this. The P4 can't evolve to a sane legal structure either. But again, it comes back to that middle part of the P4, because if they were not associated and sharing revenue, they could not generate it on their own either. They are closer to G6 on their own than they are coattailing. And that's the financial reality for them. We could go back and look at from 1984 when the Supreme Court deregulated college television. If we were to look at every metered game in a television rating, I promise you, if we go do it, and I have looked at it, about 90% of the games involve at least one of those 20 to 25 teams we're talking about. You're not going to see Wake Forest versus Duke, no offense to them, show up on those metered ratings. And if it didn't matter to Florida State, the outcome of that game, that rating would look like East Carolina versus Charlotte. Okay, that's just the reality of it that nobody wants to admit. But now we look at it and go, how do you get to something that makes sense? Inside the G6, there is absolutely talk of, well, should we have a playoff of our own? Would it generate more money for us than, say, a bowl structure? And I think where you're going to end up landing is, yeah, there's a lot of people starting to support that, but it's going to come with an asterisk. They're not going to be willing to give up a slot, at least one, and they're going to advocate for more in an expanded college football playoff, that the best team in the G6 is going to still go on to the CFP. But they're absolutely going to look at their postseason and see if there is a more revenue-friendly and, frankly, saner structure than ESPN-owned bowls.
Makes perfect sense. And I, for one, as a fan of college football, would love to see a G6 playoff. Because ultimately right now, while a seat at the table is valuable, I think a seat at the table isn't necessary if we can actually subsidize the G6 level of football and just acknowledge that there is a slight difference right now, especially with the transfer portal and guys that are great G6 players getting picked off every year to go play for P4 programs. So what is the appetite for that postseason? Because once you start that postseason, you are essentially acknowledging that you are a step below. So I can see it being very much a catch-22.
Oh, it's definitely a catch-22. And, where this is kind of evolving, and I've been following this for a long time, guys. I know you have too. The NCAA structure as it's currently configured just doesn't really fit the economic model here. It doesn't fit the legal risk. It doesn't fit the evolution that's taking place. And by the way, these are none of these issues. People were talking about these things all the way back into the 80s. They just didn't know what it would look like. But I think you're going to have to look at that structure, and we're going to cover this issue pretty extensively here at DiehardSportsNetwork.com over the next few weeks of what does that future look like, what considerations will shape it, and I think what you eventually will land on is a revised postseason structure for the G6. I think there probably still will be some access in that college football playoff. But a revised postseason. And I think at least at the G6 level, you're going to be looking at something that very much resembles like the European soccer model. I think promotion and relegation. I think revision of some of the conference boundaries to make them more regional and make them more sensical. Right now it's just complete nonsense that if revenue is one of your problems, that you're flying teams all over the country because you don't want to be in the same conference with a school in your state. Okay, you know what I mean? Like that seems kind of nonsensical and completely not in line with where we are economically. So yeah, these conversations are absolutely going to happen. They're going to accelerate, and the fact that this bill is sitting there with a chance to lock some of the conference movement, I think accelerates the conversations with some urgency pretty big. Because if there's a chance down the road that things can't move, there are people going to be talking about moves.
Visiting with Tim Stevens of the Diehard Sports Network. I just want, before we let you go, because you've referenced it a couple of times in our conversation, Washington, Congress, this Cruz-Cantwell bill that's in front of a lot of different people right now. How do you view its future as we sit here today?
Well, I think it has zero chance to pass because now the SEC and Big Ten are absolutely going to get their lobby on it after they got made the villain there. And in this situation, I really, it's easy to point the finger at the rich guy, but that was really not where that push was coming from, and that bill was definitely not written with the SEC and Big Ten's interest in mind. So now that they've taken that sort of shot, they're going to fight it, and I don't think it has much of a chance to pass. But I do think it's going to push the conversation farther with this urgency over the summer. And some conversations that might not have taken place until closer to television contract extensions, I think accelerate pretty significantly this summer.
Tim, great stuff. Thanks for hopping on with us today. We appreciate the time. Great catching up with you, and we'll do it again soon.
Appreciate you.
There you go. Tim Stevens of the Diehard Sports Network on sort of the moat, the great divide in college sports. Is it going to happen? Is that split imminent? We've heard a lot of conversations about it recently with what's happening in Washington and things having to be added, taken away from that Cruz-Cantwell bill about super conferences. It's something that I think we've all in the back of our minds thought there would be a good chance that it takes place one day. So a conversation that we had about it there. Interesting. We'll follow up on it a little bit more next on Jocks.
Go inside Jocks 94.5 on Jocks TV. Morning Jocks, Mac and Cube, and Three-Man Front video simulcasts are presented by Bill Smith Buick GMC and Game Day Men's Health. Watch on the Jocks mobile app and YouTube by searching Jocks 94.5 TV.
All right, welcome back in. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Conversation on the sort of great divide in college sports that a lot of people believe to be imminent, Greg. And you heard some of what Tim Stevens said about what he feels like the real split is, real divide is. Sort of that, I guess, middle, lower of the pack of the upper end of college football trying to protect their spots. Do you agree that that's a big force pushing or not allowing certain things to happen right now in college athletics?
Well, it's really interesting. It's not one that I've thought about, because we've all operated on the assumption that the biggest brands are the ones that are controlling the ship, but those are the ones that could operate independently and probably be just fine. The ones that are probably trying to keep a distance and to create the moat, if you will, that was described by Tim, are those that could be replaced by, say, a Boise State, or those that that would be potentially in a very competitive game against a top-tier G6 team. Those that are cashing a check, but not necessarily carrying the load of viewership. Like, I never really thought about it, but it makes sense to me. It really does.
No, it does. When you think, and you've always said it, that every conference needs bottom feeders, and which would make you wonder why those teams would be that overprotective of their spots, but also they might not see it that way. They might not know that. And there has to be an internal fear of how many eyeballs are we bringing in? How much revenue are we helping generate? All those things could be considered to be problematic by those teams, by those schools. And if so, then what are you doing about it? What can you do about it if you're one of those schools?
I don't really know. I mean, I think all the teams that are in the club know that they might be able to cash the check of being in the club, but at the same time, they're probably not in the club. So they don't really want to
50 Cent in the background here.
But they find me in the club. But I do think that they probably understand, we're just not going to say anything. We got a good thing going. Let's not mess with it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
That's the way I would sort of imagine.
1,000%.
And then you prop up your, baseball, volleyball, basketball, whatever it is that you're helping generate eyeballs, interest, revenue. You try to make sure that those are being made aware of and talked about and discussed, because those are ways that you could be assisting with the conference or helping generate revenue, or I guess adding value, bringing your own value to whatever it is that people are looking at. You might not be, and you maybe should be dismissed at some point. But yeah, it's crazy to think about it that way, because I had not looked at it as, your Kansas States, Mississippi States, whoever else you wanted to throw in there. They're all just jockeying to make sure they keep their spot, and they don't want to lose their spot. The Vanderbilts, South Carolinas, Purdue's, those teams don't want to lose their place at the table. So, but then to the flip side of that, Greg, what power do they yield? What push could they possibly have to make sure that they keep that there? Is it just agreeing with the Alabamas, Texases, Michigans, and Ohio States and jumping on board with them and making sure they get their way?
Yeah.
That's the part of it that doesn't sort of make sense to me.
Yeah, I know. But I think at the same time, you don't mess with happy. So, they're just happy to be invited to the dinner, and they get to eat really, really good food, and maybe they don't have to put their credit card on the table at the end.
Right.
They're in a really good spot. They're benefiting greatly from the gravitational pull that some of those top tier teams have. And whether or not that continues or is sustained, who knows? But I think we all acknowledge that there's always been in college football a group of the haves and the have-nots. And You want to be one of the haves, but if you're one of the have-nots, it doesn't really matter as long as you're along for the ride. And maybe you have a few good years here and there. You rip off a couple wins, but I never really thought about it that way. Like the fact that programs that are far less, many of us would view, like, I'd hate to always go to Rutgers. That doesn't feel fair, but it's probably one of the most obvious ones to point to. Like, and in the article, it used it, Rutgers versus Boise State. Who is a better program? We all know the answer to that.
I think almost anyone would say Boise.
Of course. And that's not a knock on Rutgers. It's an acknowledgement of Boise State's greatness and consistency over the last 2 decades. So it's really more of a feather in the cap to what the Broncos have built. But the Broncos also have access to just 700,000 people in their market. Meanwhile, the New York, New Jersey tri-state area is 17 million. And Rutgers is right in the backyard. And back in the day when it was very important to have eyeballs and bodies and head count in your footprint, and the conference networks were coalescing around the amount of people in your footprint, that was the number one thing why Rutgers got invited in and Maryland got invited in. Well, that was a really important thing, but no one's going to sit there and say those programs are better. But would Rutgers do whatever they could to make sure that Boise was never in the Big Ten? Of course, because Boise's pretty good and would probably beat them. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, I think that makes perfect sense to me. Never really thought about it, but it's an interesting.
Maybe that's the part of it that we should be talking about more so is when the last round of expansion, remember back to those, how protective we heard some schools were being about. It's not about are they okay with this school coming in, that school coming in. They just don't want that school. And I think we kind of dismissed a lot of that. And I'm trying to think of the specific examples right now, and I don't really recall who, because there were some of if we go, they go with us.
Yes.
And then some that didn't make sense, like Oklahoma and Texas are not going without one another. But Oklahoma doesn't care about Oklahoma State. And I think a lot of us thought back like, well, hold on. Like when you want, naturally you feel like you want them to come with you. That makes perfect sense.
Yes.
USC, UCLA. Okay. Washington's going, but they don't need Washington State to go.
Yeah.
Like what? It felt nonsensical, but maybe that being overprotective about market, eyeballs, people, that is a bigger part of it than we've been thinking about this entire time when we've gone through these rounds of expansion.
We've already known it was a big deal. I think you don't say the quiet part out loud. I mean, let's be real. Texas getting in, A&M fought that tooth and nail.
Yep.
As they should. I would have done the same thing if I were an A&M Aggie. I would have done the exact same thing. Ross Bjork, it looked like he'd seen a ghost that day in Hoover when it was announced. You know, he was not happy, nor should he have been. And I think they fought it every step of the way. But when it's Texas. Like, it makes sense, right? It's better for the league. And I think A&M ultimately came on board with, like, it's better for the league. We're going to get to play each other again. This is going to be great. We'll prove that we have now been on our own for the last 12 years. Like, this is great we have already separated from Texas. We are good. Like, we can stand alone. But guess who's not coming? Texas Tech. That ain't happening. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, they're
like Oklahoma, same thing with Oklahoma State. Like, yeah, we'll go. Yeah, we're great for the league, but guess what? Oklahoma State's not coming.
Yeah,
I guess it's redundant.
Kind of one of those. We split our land up enough.
100%.
We're not giving any more away.
And everyone that has forecasted at some point in the future, Florida State and Clemson in the SEC. I'm just telling you, I'd bet you right now $1,000 I don't see it happening.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money. I don't usually bet that much. Let's make it 20. But no, I feel that strongly that it won't happen. Why? Because South Carolina and the Florida Gators.
Right. All interesting thoughts.
The only place I could see the SEC expanding to now moving forward is North Carolina and Virginia. And whatever schools they end up considering in those groups, I'm assuming it'd probably be North Carolina and Virginia. Probably not NC State and Virginia Tech. I would think it'd be North Carolina and Virginia because those are the two most appetizing, I think, on the table for most. So you look at those two schools and you think North Carolina's going to be like, yeah, hey, bring us, but we also need Duke. We got to have that rivalry. We got to sustain that.
Because I think that's how we think as fans.
Of course it is.
As fans, we say we don't want North Carolina if we can't have Duke because we want that game. We want those games, and it's going to be incredible. We got to have that every year.
Of course.
If we were losing teams or going to try to draft teams from other places, you want the ones to come with it that have made sense in those leagues for a long time. And some of those do from a business perspective, but they don't from a fan perspective. It's a new way to look at it, and there is some intrigue as to some of the thought process there. We'll continue that conversation throughout the course of the show. Going to go back to recruiting. Another commitment for Auburn yesterday. We'll talk to Craig Haubert with ESPN, just kind of where recruiting is right now, his thoughts on the Auburn success, and maybe some other players that we need to be watching that are heading into college football this season. We'll do that right after this on Jock.
The capital of the sports talk nation. This is Jocks 94.5 and JocksFM.com. Birmingham.
All right, welcome back in. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning, 8:31, Tuesday, June 23rd, right here on Jocks. Going to continue the recruiting conversation. We talked a little bit about it yesterday. Auburn adds three-star athlete Nasir Banks, 6 foot, 180-pound athlete from McEachern High School in Georgia. Shout out to TJ Mears, former Auburn Tiger from McEachern, Georgia. That puts Auburn at 22 commitments, a top 10 class nationally. Also, we did not mention yesterday linebacker Edge Von Brandt. So not Edge, but linebacker Edge Von Brandt.
So is his name Edge Von Brandt?
His name is Edge. He plays linebacker.
Let's go.
Not an Edge who's named linebacker. His older brother, Leighton, already committed to Auburn. And then they lose 4-star running back Kingston Miles to Missouri. I think this was expected. It's probably got one of the commitments we mentioned yesterday. But Craig Haubert's going to break it all down for us of ESPN. He covers high school recruiting, national recruiting director for ESPN. What do you make of this recent success from Auburn and what they're doing under Alex Golesh?
Yeah, I think we're seeing some of the new coaches in the SEC kind of doing really well. And obviously Golesh is one of those really kind of elevating that class into, sitting here and kind of the busy time with a top 10 group. You mentioned the loss, obviously, with Miles, but that was a local pickup from Missouri. Those are the type of battles, I think, if you're any team, really, if you want to be successful, you got to keep good recruiting starts at home, and they were able to kind of get that done. But interestingly enough, the other running back in that class is Myson Johnson-Cook, who is essentially from that same area as well. He's technically from Illinois, but goes East St. Louis right over the bridge there. So they still have a dynamic back within that class. So, lose one, but still have an excellent player there. I mean, going into Georgia, they've been really actively, obviously, we all know Auburn's in Alabama, but depending which direction you drive, you could be in Georgia quicker than you could be in other parts of Alabama. So obviously it's always important. I think I look at a guy like a George Lamons in that class and what they could potentially do with him, a tall kind of lead player who kind of fancies himself as a wide receiver. But I know we had him down at the Under Armour game in January, and, one of the tight ends kind of got banged up, and he was able to kind of go in there and kind of play kind of a wing and do some blocking and stuff like that. So I think he could be a really kind of flexible piece. So I think he's doing an outstanding job. I mean, what he did at South Florida certainly kind of showed what he's capable of. And then at a place like Auburn where they've got resources and, coaches in the past have successfully recruited there, I think he's kind of really kind of hit the ground running. And I don't know if you've watched Leighton Von Brandt. I don't know much about his younger brother. I have been around Leighton. He's right up your alley, Cole. You're gonna love him. I mean, he is nasty. He plays with a lot of edge, a lot of tenacity. He's going to be a fun player to watch.
What do you attribute the recruiting success to? Because I mean, it's pretty amazing that they've been able to generate this much momentum without ever really playing a game, without a proof of concept, and without Alex Golesh being able to create and cultivate those relationships over a long period of time. So what do you attribute it to?
Okay. To your point, there's no proof of concept, but Greg, the other side of that coin in recruiting is you get to sell dreams,
hope,
potential without saying, well, if you're 3 years in and you hadn't had a winning season, it gets hard to sell your vision. When you're new, and you've had some success, and obviously he had South Florida kind of on the cusp of the kind of the playoff run there for a while. He's known as a very good offensive mind. You go someplace, when you're starting over as well, especially the last run didn't go very well for the Tigers. They love their football there. You guys know it as well as anybody. There's an excitement when a new staff comes in, when there's the dawning of a new era and everything is in front of you. The campus gets behind you. Faculty kind of gets behind you. The town gets behind you. Everybody, there's kind of a renewed sense of excitement. You get to sell that to recruits. I'm sure you guys have been around Golish. He's a good personality. He's a good guy to talk to. Comes across as very kind of down to earth. It's not, when you spend a little time around him, it's not surprising to see him kind of do well in recruiting. I think he's able to kind of really kind of connect on on kind of a similar level. You quickly kind of feel very comfortable around him. So I think that's a lot. I think Auburn's history, Auburn has its tools. I think his past history of being a good offensive mind, what he was able to kind of do there at South Florida, and then just kind of the promise of a bright future, kind of you stir all those things kind of together, and just being in a wealthy area in terms of talent-wise, he's been able to kind of put all those forces together to kind of get into a good spot. Now, I think, to your point, the next year or two becomes a proof of concept. If they're sitting here around 500 2 years from now, I doubt you're going to see this type of success in recruiting that he's having right now.
Can you put their entire class in context for us? Like, some people have it in the top 10 right now, 22 commits, but we also know, Craig, this time of year, it can be how many kids you have on board compared to other schools. Where is this class going to finish nationally, in your opinion?
Yeah, you're right. It is. This is one of those times of years where doing class rankings becomes very difficult, because what is a class of 12 with 9 300 players versus a class of 25 with 2 300? It could be very difficult to kind of do an apple to apple type of comparison. But for them, you're right. They are in the 20s, but 10 of those are players in the 300, in the SC Next 300 plus a 4-star. Several, we consider anybody, if you go on ESPN.com and look at the rankings, outside of 4 stars, 3-star, if you're a grade 79 or a 78, you're really not that far outside that mix. We consider that kind of a high 3-star. And that's what this class really, with most exceptions, I mean, obviously they got a kicker in there we don't have ranked, but it's really good depth there. So it's not like a class that right now it's just they're out the gate with kind of big numbers. Usually a class that is like that, that's kind of ranked right now in the top 25. Will they be in the top 25 when this is all said and done? Probably not, once other classes start to build numbers. Is somebody like Minnesota. Minnesota's got 1 or 2 4-stars, a lot of depth, stuff like that for them to hold on. But I think for Auburn at this pace, and with some of what they still have kind of potentially out there to be able to kind of pick up, certainly think they are in a position to at least contend for a top 10 finish.
When you look at Alabama, way down the list right now, not a big class, anticipating it being maybe even single digits out of high school. There's only 9 seniors on the roster, so they just don't have the numbers to be able to bring in a top flight group this year. But people are kind of panicking, and I've been telling them, man, look at the numbers. They don't have the scholarships available to go and offer everybody right now. They got to be very selective. So while it's only 9 players so far, how do you feel about their class?
Yeah, you're right. You have to almost change your thinking a little bit in this era, because with the transfer portal and how much movement there is, sometimes you have to look at the benefits of retention and keeping consistency within your program. And so you may not have the numbers to go out. And there's going to be ebb and flows to recruiting, because you may not be able to have, like you mentioned, 25, 30 slots to fill. They did recently lose a defensive end, an edge player to Texas. That was an in-state guy. But listen, our view, the best quarterback in this class is Elijah Haven, the quarterback out of Louisiana. And that was a huge recruiting win. So he's still kind of driving the bus, so to speak, for this class. There's still some players out there. There's an in-state offensive lineman. There's a 4-star player, Jeremiah Beverly, who's pretty much a local kid. He seems like, they're in good position there. So there's some players to add. They flipped a tight end from Syracuse. And I know people listen and go, what's the big deal if you flip a tight end from Syracuse? First of all, Fran Brown's a really good evaluator. And, this is a player who was starting to pick up steam. He's out of St. Francis Academy in Baltimore. I don't want to butcher his last name, but I had a chance to see him about 3 weeks ago, and he's a well put together player. So that was a really nice pickup. That's kind of a 3-star that fans may not do cartwheels over, but again, that's really good pickup for that class. And I just think, listen, I did a spot yesterday with somebody else, and that was a question too: should Alabama be panicking? It seems like Alabama's always panicking, but it's when you're in the post Nick Saban era. I think the job that Kalen DeBoer has done on the field and in recruiting, following arguably the greatest ever, has done a really good job. So yeah, it's small, and it's going to become more frustrating for Alabama fans as places like Texas A&M and Oklahoma and Texas and even their rival Auburn are sitting in the top 10, and it's going to probably take them a while to probably even crack the top 25, depending on when some of these commitments that they seem to be in the battle for start to come on board.
I don't think there's any doubt. I wanted to get to a couple other SEC teams that we haven't really discussed traditional recruiting with, and you just give us your thoughts on them. Where is Oklahoma right now? Because that's a team we have high expectations for this upcoming season. I don't think we've mentioned much about them as far as just their traditional recruiting class.
Yeah, they're doing really well. I mean, we have them sitting at number 2. Miami's kind of right on their heels, kind of as well as kind of Florida and Texas Tech. But they've done. I really look at that class as they were struggling on the field. So 2024, obviously they had their struggles on the field. Things didn't go well. They were able to turn things around last year, as you guys well know. To me, really the turning point in recruiting for them was last August. We're coming up on about a year where they were kind of in the same boat where Alabama kind of was in. Smaller class, a couple of good players outside the top 25. Then a player who I think we're going to talk a little bit about this fall, Jay Krell out of IMG, 5-star defensive end, wound up committing to Oklahoma right around the end of July, beginning of August. And that was kind of really the fuse that kind of lit Oklahoma into being able to finish strong in recruiting for this past cycle. And then a player out of Utah, Cruz Jones, came on board in December for this current class. And I know he was a guy that they really wanted to get on board early to kind of be a similar, maybe Pied Piper type player. And they've kind of come out the gate really well. And Oklahoma is an interesting place in terms of, it seems like as, you can very much turn recruiting into a sociology talk in terms of how, people move and people will be moving from the coast to more interior parts of the country. And Oklahoma is starting to grow in population. And this is one of the stronger years within the state. And from what I'm hearing from people who live in that state, they're saying that 28, 29 are going to be even better. And that's great news for Oklahoma because, like I said earlier, good recruiting starts at home. They've got 2 outstanding offensive linemen in that state, and Cooper Hackett out of Fort Gibson, and then Caden Penny, who's out of really one of the powerhouse programs in Oklahoma, Bigsby, who wins the state championship pretty much every year. Gabriel Osborne out of Mustang. He's an ESPN 300 cornerback. So they've been able to kind of really take advantage of good in-state talent. The Oklahoma that maybe 20 years ago that was really successful, the Big 12 Oklahoma, was always active in California. They've started to reach out a little bit back there with a guy like Taven Epps, a linebacker. Like I said, they pulled the Cruz Jones kid out of Utah. So a little bit of a national flair, but they're really kind of doing well in state. And I mean, if they can continue to go on the field, again, Oklahoma is one of those programs. They should be top 5, top 10 every year in recruiting. And right now I think they're setting the base up to do that as long as they can keep rolling on the field.
Last year, we were all taken aback by the incredible play of Malachi Toney and kind of bursting onto the scene. I know a lot of people felt good about him, but I don't think anyone anticipated what he did in year one. Is there a guy like that right now that we need to be keeping our eye on going into the season that might be just kind of flying under the radar, but is poised to maybe break out in a big way?
Oh, you really put me on the spot here. That's a good question because there's so many names that come through, and some of those guys that, inside the SEC. Okay, here's a guy that we had him ranked high. We had him ranked way higher than a lot of other places, but I've long said I'm going to push my chips in on this guy from everything that I have seen. And Texas is a school that had a lot of turnover at running back with players going out and then bringing players in via the portal and players with more experience. But I am a huge fan of Derek Cooper out of Chaminade Madonna. If fans are familiar, it's one of the top programs in Southpaw, a little bit of a smaller school, but dominant within their classification. And he's a player, when I watch him run, kind of reminds me, just with his powerful stride, kind of his big frame, kind of gives me like Adrian Peterson type vibes. And one of the reasons why he was able to elevate to a 5-star for us was, his competitive nature. Anytime there was a chance to compete, he would just come out and just do it. And he's got outstanding receiving skills. He's a good route runner, great hands, so he could really be that kind of versatile weapon, not only as a runner, but as a receiver out of the backfield. And, I don't know, touches may be difficult to kind of come by, but I think he's one of those players that's so talented between his size, speed, and ball skills that Texas is going to find a way to kind of get him in the mix this year to kind of be an extra weapon in that offense.
I'm hearing some buzz about the Richard Anderson kid at LSU, also D lineman. Could you see him being a big help this year?
Yes, their whole entire defensive line class that they brought in. Obviously, the headliner amongst that group was Lamar Brown. Now, he couldn't enroll early, but he literally goes to school on that campus. So he's been around. And then Richard Anderson, he goes to Edna Carr, who is really one of the top programs within that state. So he's been in a lot of big games. He's played really well. He's kind of an interesting guy. He's really quiet. I had a chance to kind of, I remember being on campus there last fall and just kind of visiting with them and, just talking with them. And he's big. He's super quick and powerful for how big he is for 300, well over 300 pounder. I mean, closer to 350, but elite quickness for his size. But yeah, he also talks. He goes, I don't really watch football. Sometimes those kids intrigue me because you kind of assume, well, if you're an outstanding football player, you probably love football and want to soak it in as much as possible. But for some kids, it's like, it's just what they do. And they kind of got other interests and stuff like that. So it's kind of interesting to see where that kind of fork in the road kind of sometimes in life goes. But he's a local kid. He's big. He's quick. I think Lamar Brown is a potential difference maker. I would love to see it more at offensive guard, but his heart's on the defensive line. And the other guy in that class that's done really well and kind of creating a lot of buzz is Deuce Gerald out of Collins Hill in Georgia. He's a part of that young D-line class as well. And he's a little bit of kind of a swing guy, but he's super explosive. And I think you're going to see all three of those guys kind of play a role amongst that defensive front this year.
That'd be interesting. 3 freshman D linemen in the rotation would be wild for LSU, but an area that they might need some help. So be intrigued to see. Craig, great stuff, man. Thanks for catching us up on some of the recruiting, both locally, nationally. We look forward to having you back again soon.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Good talking to you guys. Take care.
There you go. Craig Haubert, the national recruiting director for ESPN. 2 5-star D linemen coming into LSU, Greg, and then another 4-star that Craig just brought up that says could help as well. So we look at that D line sometimes and we say, don't know if that's going to be a dominant group, a really good group. How good is that group going to be? Even if it's 12 to 15 snaps each from 3 freshmen that they could give you quality reps with, that could be, especially towards the end of the year, that could be a massive benefit for LSU.
Could be huge. And we'll see. I mean, I think relying on freshmen is always a little dangerous. But, man, there's been more booms than busts, I feel like, of the guys that have gotten extensive playing time the last few years. Like, guys are just more capable of coming in and contributing really good reps at a young age.
Yep.
Back in the day, it was like never happened. Very rare. Now, in some cases, you see arguably the top 2 players in the sport at wide receiver that came in and made massive differences as true freshmen. So it can happen for sure.
Well, for one, they've been there 8 months.
Yeah, that helps.
It's just it's wild to think about.
Well, they've also played year-round football. I mean, they're just more prepared for the adjustment and the hands-on coaching that you're now receiving from the staff in June, July. I mean, I showed up in June, didn't see my coaches till August.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's just these guys just are, the acclimation period's a lot shorter for them now.
No doubt. All right. So that's sort of our recruiting segment for the day. Interesting football conversation that I want to begin on the other side. Somebody says they want to play. Can they? Could you? We'll discuss it next on Jocks.
Go inside Jocks 94.5 on Jocks TV. Morning Jocks, Mac and Cube, three-man front video simulcasts are presented by Bill Smith Buick GMC and Game Day Men's Health. Watch on the Jocks mobile app and YouTube by searching Jocks 94.5 TV.
All right, welcome back in. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Interesting football question that I'm going to need feedback from the audience on. Before we do that, don't forget you can listen online, jocksfm.com. The app is in your app store, iPhone, Android. Download that for free. Watch us live on YouTube. The app will also direct you to YouTube as well as interviews from guests and full segments of the show, full hours of the show. And if you're walking around your home, don't forget, tell your home smart speaker to enable the Jock skill.
Bill Smith Buick GMC is Alabama's largest GMC dealership, and they can offer Alabama's largest discounts. Couple that with the best service, and they are number one again. Thanks to the great state of Alabama for making them number one. They also have that used car supercenter where you can find a deal on the lot regardless of what your budget is. They sold more GMCs than anyone in the Southeast last year, and they have won Dealer of the Year 6 years in a row. Go get you a deal like this, like a GMC Sierra 1500 Denali Ultimate, $87,500 is the list price. You can take $15,500 off that list price. You get it for just $72,000. It's deals like that that keep people coming back. There's a reason why they sell more than anyone. It's because they have deals that no one else can match. There's a reason why 75% of their business repeat customers. It's because you have a better experience when you shop with Bill Smith. Take the short trip to Coleman, up I-65, exit 310, Highway 31. You can also shop online, have delivered right to your driveway at BillSmithBuickGMC.com.
There's a certain celebrity. Is that accurate, John?
Notable person. I don't want to call him a celebrity because that would imply people like him.
I think some do, but yeah, okay, that's fine. Notable individual that says he wants to play football, but not just on any team or any position. So it brought the question to me, off the street, what's the toughest position in football? And this is where I struggle. To have success, to make a team, to survive, to even be formidable in any way, shape, manner. So when we come back, I'm going to let you hear the individual, tell you who the individual is, and then we're going to start the conversation of what's the most difficult position in football to just walk off the street and play. And we can no football experience, limited football experience, however, great athlete, super athlete, no athletic skills whatsoever. And I will go ahead and preface this with we are leaving special teams out of this discussion.
Now the phase doesn't count.
Correct. So if you thought you were going to call in 800-239-9569 or text in 205-834-9450 or tweet in at Mac and Cube and say, hold her. Wrong. We're not allowing that. But we do want you to be a part of the show. What position could you step on the field and actually play next on Jocks?
This is McElroy and Cubelic in the morning.
Square up.
Yo, what's going on, man? It's Andre Berto, two-time world champion. Today's guest, NFL legend, media mogul. What's up? Ocho Cinco. What's good, baby? We call them gym fighters. Yeah. These guys are in the gym, they can probably beat the hell out of any world champion you can think of.
Yeah. When that bell ring, and them lights on, you got 10, 15,000 watching. When I stepped in that ring, I think boxing is becoming great again.
Square up.
Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
Let's go.
This isn't your average podcast.
We threw like a spontaneous party out of nowhere. It was crazy.
This is Full Send.
Drake weekend in Toronto, that's like, imagine telling me that like 10 years ago. That's yo, you're going to rip with Drake for his album launch release party in Toronto. Like, I'm not passing that up for anything.
Join the party.
She went to Met Gala. He went to the game.
What is the Met Gala? Ridiculous.
I think it's an excuse to dress up like an idiot and go to a ball.
The Full Send Podcast.
Oh, we're ready.
Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
Square up.
Yo, what's going on, man? It's Andre Berto, two-time world champion. You know, I fought. I loved it. I really wanted to do that sit down from a fighter's perspective.
My G. What's going on? Caleb Platts. What's going on, my boy?
Now you got a chance to really draw in your audience, to let them see who you are.
I've had to have a lot of internal talks to say, do I even want to carry on?
As fighters, we know what time it is. Like I think the time is now.
Square up.
Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
Let's go.